Evening, everyone. 2 seconds. I'm just going to share the screen. There's a few more people still joining, which is a really good sign. Well done to those of you who were almost 26 minutes early. That is keen as mustard. Anyway, is mustard really keen though? How's that become a saying over time? Keen as mustard. Right. Anthony's just sharing his screen. Does that mean I can do a clicky thing? No. So he's clicking for me at this moment. So welcome to week 2. Thank you so much for all joining us. Well, we've already got people chatting. Okay. I'm here, so glad I'm able to make it. We are so glad you're able to make it as well. Look, this is the second week now. We have 20 of you already in here. There's a couple more waiting to join, which is really, really good. I know there was through email a little bit of confusion over swapping from Tuesday to Monday. So I'm glad almost over half of you found your way back to us on Monday. But yeah, the reason it was Tuesday last week was purely because of the Easter weekend. We didn't want to be taking up any of your time on the Monday, and then from now on it's every Monday for the next 5 weeks. So welcome. Hope everyone's had a cracking weekend. Obviously this is a one-way discussion, so I could spend the next 45 minutes telling you about my weekend, but it was good. It was a bit sunny, it's a bit rainy. In fact, it was the first weekend in the whole of the pandemic where we've woken up and it's been raining. Complete game changer when you've got 2 children. But anyway, enough about me, more about you. Welcome back to the Staying Resilient and Focused 6-week webinar. Week 2, we're talking about how we can become more mentally fit. And just before I pass over to Antony and allow him to run with this week's seminar, this isn't about mental health. One of our sort of real ambitions at the moment is to help people understand that mental fitness is completely different to mental health, and we believe that mental fitness is all based around the way of looking after yourself in the mind, you know, using what we're doing here online and personal development and things like that, goals, hitting success, achieving, failing, and then going again, and rewarding ourselves with those internal drivers to make us feel good, because that's what mentally fit should be all about. Mental health, we feel, is a different end of the line. And can you flick across, please? i.e. the screen. Nothing untoward going on here. So just recapping what we're going to cover today, and also what we spoke about last week. We're going to talk quickly about the 4 skills model again, which is going to be brought on by Antony shortly when he clicks the buttons. And that's what the main bulk of today is going to be, exploring mental health and mental fitness and the differences between it. Then we're going to be talking about past, present and future and how it can affect us. Talk about overwhelm and procrastination, and then we're going to look at next week, and I'll explain more about that shortly, but that's going to be using the ICE model that we developed as a pair, and has gone on to be involved in some of the biggest organizations in the world, and is the lead topic in a lot of stuff we do. So we're looking forward to sharing that with you. So moving on, just a quick recap. I'm Ben Williams, and I've always had an upside down head. And I think, looking at the list, I don't need to reintroduce myself again, because everyone was here last week. So, Ant, over to you, mate. Well, it looks like we've lost Ant. There he is.
Yes. Just having some minor technical issues. Apparently I couldn't share or my computer screen at the same time I was trying to start my video. So here we go again. Let's do that and get back into the fray. Yeah, as all of you know from last week, Anthony Thompson, 10 years Royal Marines, came out with a big injury, went out into the corporate world. Now find myself delivering to fantastic people like you around topics such as mindset, resilience, overcoming adversity, and all of the things that are familiar to that. So let's get stuck into it then. Okay, last week we spoke about this sense of accepting what we're currently going through in order to be able for us to go as a precursor before we go into the next point of that, which is move that unwanted emotion and then ultimately adapt and overcome our situation. Obviously, that's very prevalent and relevant right now, more than ever, I would say, albeit for many of us, this is not the first time we've been through adversity. This is now only the time that we've all been through shared adversity. And shared adversity can, unless we've prepared for it, bear a heavy burden upon some of us. Then we focused on thinking about things outside of our control, which obviously can increase that level of emotion. It will make it hard to be able to remove that unwanted emotion if we're consistently focusing about all the things that we can't actually control. So how can we control the things that we can control? Those things such as your actions, how you work, your exercise, etc. And now we're going to go into the 4 skills model. Okay, so last week we spoke about looking at these two models. On the left-hand side, we've got pyramid A. On the right-hand side, we've got pyramid B. Obviously, pyramid A is upside down. Now, as we know, what we concentrate that was within our control, we have far greater opportunity for growth. So let's do this. If we were to apply a bit of pressure on this pyramid here, what do you think might happen? I know for some, you'll look at that and go, well, it will just become a stable pyramid. But let's say, just for this schematic, if you were to push that over, it then hits the deck, crashes, crumbles, or even worse, completely shatters. Now, what if we were to do the same to pyramid B? I'd argue that it would probably be more stable and it has a greater resisting power than pyramid A. Now, let's just take that and look at it through a different lens. Let's say that we are those pyramids. How many of us are feeling stable regularly, consistently throughout this? How many of us are feeling unstable before, now, and after? We're going to go into the 4 skill model and look at how we can set that base foundation for the success. Not only that word was success, by the way, easy for me to say. Success not only for now, but also for when we're going forward in the future. There's 4 skills that Ben and I have looked at, and we've roughly broken them down into inner skill, soft skill, hard skill, and professional skill. So our inner skill is primarily everything that we believe in. It's our ethos, it's our values, it's the courage, and it's kind of our spirit. It's, we look back and we say, who are we? This is kind of focused around our inner skills. And then we've got our soft skills. Our soft skills are all the things like leadership, engagement, critical thinking, negotiation, conflict resolution. These are all things that we primarily need to interact with one another. And then we have our hard skills, those things such as most of us have done, SATs, GCSEs, A-levels for some, university for others, and PhDs and so on and so forth. These are all the hard skills. These are all the things that we are taught by a tutor or teacher. And then once we finish that phase, we then go out into the big bad world and we have to start learning some professional skills. So we turn up to work and we don't know how to do the job, and we're suddenly looking around and we get told, this is how we do our job. And then what happens as you go through your work, you get better by what? Creating and increasing your skill level. That's going on courses or learning the job. All of these types of skills are based around what we mean when we say professional skills. However, for a lot of us, we kind of look a little bit like pyramid A. We kind of skip past inner and soft. We don't really focus on it that much during school. I certainly didn't. And I suppose for many of you, you didn't. We then go straight into hard skills. We look at SAT, we look at GCSEs, we're getting through school to the best of our ability, pass or fail. And then what do you think we do? We take that idea into the next place that we're going to, this pass or fail. We go straight into the professional world. And we start to look at the professional things that we can do with our job, and we start unloading loads of skills for the next 20, 30 years for some of us. But we actually kind of neglect that inner and that soft skill. What else could it mean? Well, those inner skills are primarily your stability. It's the thing that holds you resolute in times of extreme adversity, such as COVID-19 is a brilliant, brilliant example right now. And then, as I said earlier, your soft skills are your interaction with one another. It's how do we talk to one another? How am I talking to you right now? What skills do I require in order to be able to communicate a message I have right here over to the people that are in this webinar right now? Knowledge, obviously I need that as well. And knowledge, these are the things that we focus so heavily on during our childhood, during our teens, and then, eventually into our 20s. And for some of us, we never pick that up again. We just go straight into our specific. So we could be excellent at what we do, but we're just unloading that bar. So we start getting that shaped pyramid. Now it could look like this. We have strong stability, interaction, knowledge, and specific. And just for a second, imagine that could be us. And so what Ben and I are going to focus on over the next 6 weeks, and what we started with last week, are looking at these stable platforms, okay? This soft skill, the interaction or stability, however you word it, these are our primary focuses over the next 4 weeks. This right here, I said it last week, and it's one of my favorite sayings. You cannot change directions. You cannot change destination right now. But you can change direction. That was a quote by Jim Rohn, one of my favorite puzzles. I'd certainly recommend that you look at as many things you can over the internet to increase that sort of understanding, that soft skill, that inner skill.
Tomo, your screen's not sharing, mate.
Right now?
Yeah, it's just your face. We're loving it. We love your face.
Okay.
Can we all have a round of applause for his face?
So no one's seen what we're talking about? Excellent. Excellent. Really? Fantastic. This is what we love. We love a little bit of having to overcome adversity. Now I'm really fearful that I'm going to mess it up even worse. Here we go. Right.
But it's all good. We're all part of a community here, people, so we could just laugh. It's fine. Here we go.
So here we go again.
And I'll give him a hard time over this as well.
Please do, because it may make me better in the future. Clearly, I don't have enough professionals.
Okay. All right.
So I'm going to rattle through that so that everyone can see what I was talking about and bring you up to speed, because I'm glad that you said that now, because we were going to get on some really complex stuff, and that could have been a bit of an issue. And I did wonder why I couldn't see my own face there. It was a little bit off-putting, but we got there. We're all good. Is everyone okay? I hope so. Okay, as I was talking about the 4 skills model, okay, we were talking about a pyramid. This is where the pressure is applied. There's pyramid A on the left, pyramid B on the right. Okay, you. Okay, 4 skills: inner, soft, hard, professional. So you're really missing some good stuff here, guys. And that's what we were going for there. Obviously, most of us look like an inverted pyramid, and many of us want to achieve a stable platform. Identifying the 4 skills, there we go. Stability, interaction, knowledge, and specific. Stability, interaction, us, which I was talking about. And then what we're going to focus on. You see the production quality of how that green circle moved on to interaction stability. Fantastic. You cannot change destination right now, but you can change direction. And we are back in the room. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. That was just a bit of a test for you guys who was paying attention. Clearly, everyone. But so what do we need from you? Well, we're going to set some foundations over the next 6 weeks. But ultimately, we're going to need some time investment, and we're also going to need consistency. Because what we're going to learn over these next 6 weeks isn't just something that we can apply over the hour that we spend together. It's something that we need to invest in our own personal lives during each week, but definitely after, for having that change in those inner and those soft skills. And now we move on to the good stuff, mental fitness. This is quite an interactive PowerPoint, and I'm glad that I was picked up for obviously getting not being on camera or not having this on camera. But I want you just to quickly fire into the Q&A box or the chat. What do you think when you hear the term health and fitness? Let's just see some live responses now. as I talk. Weight, nutrition, exercise. Yeah, brilliant. I think we'll nail that. Yeah. Weight, nutrition, exercise, all of the positive things around health and fitness. Now, what do you think when you hear mental health? And I won't do a little chat thing. I'll probably guess for most of you what you think. But what do we think? We think anxiety, depression, suicide in some cases, and all of the negative connotations around mental health. Why is that? Imagine if we were able to divert some, and this is key, some of those mental health terms and apply them with a mental fitness attitude or a mental fitness mindset. What's key? Well, we're going to look at things such as mental nutrition. I noticed that one of you put, Sarah, I think you put nutrition as well. Nutrition is an absolutely fundamental part of what we're trying to achieve with mental fitness. Okay? I'm sure you would all understand if I was to say we were going to eat a burger every single day for the next year, we'd be in a pretty bad place. Coronary heart disease, all the types of negative things that are going to happen. Guess what's happening every time you have that influx of news 24/7? Just need to pause the recording there just a second, because we've got Susie on the line who has managed to get on as a host and has her mic on, which is Ben, I hope you can step in and square that away.
Yeah, Susie, get off the microphone.
Excellent. I'm so glad you turned up to this professional webinar, everyone. Mental nutrition, absolutely. Okay, so just like that, those all the news that feeds that are firing in at us right now, they're kind of like the cheeseburgers if we don't control it, and that's key. So let's have a look at that. Mental nutrition. Mental nutrition are things like the books and the content we read, the videos we watch, the news we listen to. All of these types of things add up to our, what we feed our brains with primarily. There are three ultimate ways in which we do that. We also need to consider massively mental rest, i.e. time out from what we're doing. This is a key fundamental. Sleep really shouldn't be underestimated. Now I know from Ben, I know from my own personal circumstance, that having young children is a massive hindrance when it comes to getting a good night's sleep. But it is what it is. However, maybe that's one as we need to work on as we move forward. And I know that's completely down to the children being acceptable and not acceptable in terms of sleeping. So we get it. Meditation. Now, loads of people have different views on meditation. It's something where realistically, it's just like any skill. It's something that needs to be practiced a little bit, given a bit of rest, then try again, then try again. Over time, you will get better at it. And it's something that you will learn to do, because I speak to loads of people about meditation and they always talk about how difficult it is to disengage from what it is that they're doing. The hardest thing to do is meditation. So what they try and do is cram in as much as they possibly can over a week or 2 weeks or whatever it might be. It becomes too overwhelming and they get put off by it. And they never learn that skill, because it is another skill of meditation. And I would tell you honestly, from my own personal experience and also Ben's, that it is an absolutely fantastic thing to get started. But equally with that, the first thing to perhaps think about is something like time to be disengaged, okay? Disconnect from the world that surrounds you. And as I said last week, this mobile phone, this thing right here, can be as much use as it is, it can be also a massive hindrance when it comes to sorting ourselves out mentally fit up here and keeping ourselves on top. I'll give you a little tip. I may have said it last week, but for me, I went through this process of turning off all of my notifications. So the only notifications I have right now are my call and also my text. That's it. Everything else is off. Emails, WhatsApp, the whole works. I don't let anybody bother me, because ultimately I don't want to be interrupted. I don't want to feel like I'm constantly engaged with the world, because actually, think about it, most of those things are out of my control. Mental fitness, okay? Active mental fitness. You will have definitely heard this. The physiological absolutely supports the psychological, and it's so true. It is so true. I guarantee you, if you find that it's all getting too much and you go out for a run, because the endorphins and things that Ben may have spoken about or is going to speak about in the future, you get these things called runner's high, and that's because of the endorphin release that you get, which actually makes you feel good, makes you feel better because of the actual chemicals it's releasing into your body. So there is a definite link between physiological and psychological. However, just going out and going through the motions for 10, 15, 20 minutes is better than doing nothing and neglecting and sat there really in super isolation, I'd like to call it, of just doing nothing in your house. I'm not for a second suggesting that anyone is, but there's just a part to consider. This is a great one. Association of the positive is what most people advise you to do, and you hear it from a number of different coaches, a number of different speakers around the world, and they're always like, focus on the positive, focus on the positive. It's all about the positive. Well, Ben and I have considered that, and we've picked up tips along the way that's actually a little easier to disassociate the negative. So instead of constantly thinking, I need to be positive, I need to be positive, think, do I need to think that thought, or can it just stay where it is or stay out of my mind? Again, kind of linking it back to this, is it within my control? Do I really need to worry about it? Yes, it's terrible. Let's not be not empathetic about it, but do I need to let it attack my heart, my emotion, as much as it could potentially do it? Reflection. We've spoken about it. It's one of the key fundamentals. And certainly in this time, like I said to you right at the start of this presentation, although you weren't able to see because of the technical issues that I had and was creating, reflection is absolutely massive in terms of, if we don't reflect and look where we've come from, then how could we possibly deal with a similar scenario consciously and analytically? And this is the difference, in the moment. And this is something we're going to go on and share in a little while. And reflection can be as simple as, right, sitting down at the end of the day, what did I do today? How did I feel about today? Journaling, all these types of things. Just writing down, on a note to begin with. Start really basic. Don't overstress it. Don't overcomplicate it. And this is where so many habits are missed, because we try to put on too much pressure in the early days before we actually, again, learned the skill. Learning the skill. If there's one thing you take away from today, is know that everything is a skill to be learned. If you've got enough time to dedicate to it, it will happen, but it does take time. And through that reflection, you can remember a time of personal hardship. We've all been through some terrible stuff, but now we're all going through terrible stuff together at the same time because of the same thing. And that's the difference. But equally, we've got to apply a level of intellect to that processing, by which I mean, let's educate our emotions as much as we educate our intellect. Key fundamental. This is one of my favorite subjects, and in the next slide, or a couple of slides away, there's a bit of a journey that I'm going to take you on, just very brief, but it's going to take you through a bit of past, present, and future. Don't worry, it's not going to be any Darren Brown stuff. You're not going to your eyes are going to go all swirly through the camera, because I can't do that. But it is going to be a bit of an eye-opener for some, because it certainly was putting it together. I want you to consider this. Here's where I go, Darren Brown in you. How do we process events? By which I mean, how do we store the events that are happening to us in the moment after? Think about some of the things that Ben has spoken about in his previous stories. Think about how everything that happens negatively in that moment, how are you then going through that reflection piece and, if you like, storing it correctly in our mental factory or our mental filing cabinet? You start to begin, you begin to think of the mind as sort of that mental filing cabinet, and really just try to close your eyes and visualize this repository that is being created in our mind. And we've got this file keeper who's storing all of these archives away in our brain. It's kind of the same as a computer. We can become corrupted if we don't process the data correctly in the moment. And again, that is a skill, as a high-level skill, but it's something that can be achieved over time. During this day, I wouldn't mind you writing this down in your notepads. Consider this. The things that have happened to me, the things happening to me right now, and then the things that could happen to or for me. What is currently going on in the world that I feel affected by right now, in this moment? What's happening? What is affecting you in this moment? I would argue that this webinar is affecting you right now. Where am I right now? Holistically. Because I know you're behind a laptop or behind a phone or taking notes, whatever it is, but where are you right now? Good piece of reflection. So let's look at this past and present now. Okay, got the past, present, and future. Let's just break it down now. Let's look at those three aspects just for a moment. So obviously the past is the previous, what was, what's happened. You know, it's not what's to come, it's not what's happening right now, it's something that has happened. So at the start of the webinar, I messed up. I realized that, or Ben told me, that you guys couldn't see what I was talking about. That was the past event. How does it dictate me in the present? Well, you saw me adapt to it. What am I going to do about it in the future? Well, just simply make sure my camera's on. But this is the key part of it. Future is the unknown. We can't be 100% certain about what's going to happen. We think we can, but we actually can't. The present is where we live. It's where we are right this second. Where we are the second that I just said a second ago, and so on and so forth. It's everything that's happening literally this moment. Let's look at the past just for a second, okay? If we're thinking about all the things that have happened, is there a cause to say that perhaps all of the things that have happened lead us to this sadness, this depression, this thought stream of, I wish it was like that, or never used to be like that, or the thing that happened in my past really, really affects me today? Now, let's look at future. The future, because we may be held slightly back in the past, ultimately our future is dictated by the unknown. Because it's unknown, it creates a sense of anxiety, this sense of, oh my God, this is just too much. I can't focus, I can't concentrate what's happening, because what if the future plays out like the past? What if? And that constant what if thought process that we go through in our mind is consistently causing us anxiety. So we may be suffering a little bit from depression, but we could be focusing all on anxiety, or we could be focusing all on depression because we're trying to live in the past, or we're trying to predict for the future. But imagine if we could do this right now. Imagine if we could learn from everything that we've been through intellectually, with our emotions increased in their intellect, learning from how things were. The sadness remains in the past. It is sad today, but it doesn't have to affect us right now. We give it that power to affect us right now. You obviously can't just not worry about the future and go, oh, well, it's just the future, let's not worry about it. We need to plan for it, but let's plan for it intelligently, which ultimately leads us to what we do and we feel right now. So actually we can use those two things to positively impact our actions in the moment, because the action piece is the thing that's going to take us from where we are currently to the next stage. There's a reason why you're all on this webinar right now, is because something's happened in the past, or you're concerned about something happening in the future, but you know that you need to act right now. I feel very humbled that you've taken action to log into this webinar and listen to Ben and I go through some very interesting, thought-provoking webinars for the purpose of yourself, because that's what it's all about. And talking about ourselves, let's just for a second identify with ourselves. I want you to pull out your to-do list. Some of you may have it on your phone, some of you may have it on the wall, some of you may have it in your calendar, wherever it is. Just have a little glance at your to-do list. Do that now, just for 10 seconds, if it is obviously within reach. Or some people's to-do lists are so far away they can't get them. They just keep adding. I want to ask you this. How many of us feel like we are constantly procrastinating? Be interested to see, just write in the group, just write in the chat box there, how many of us feel like we're actually procrastinating. You don't have to answer. I do like, yeah, 100%, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. It's pretty confirmatory. So how about this then? How about this? How many of you are also feeling overwhelmed? What if procrastination or procrastinating was actually an inability for us to identify what truly matters to us? What if we just had so many things coming at us consistently that we're constantly in this state of being overwhelmed? What if we were not able to actually figure out exactly what we're procrastinating on? Because I guarantee you, it's probably not that much. I want you to get a simple piece of paper, okay? Just a spare piece of paper like that, and do this. Write out 2 columns, line underneath it. On the left-hand column, write overwhelmed by. On the right-hand column, write procrastinating on. Now, with your to-do list, and you can do this in your own time because it may take you a little while, write down in the left-hand column, overwhelmed by, everything from your to-do list that you feel overwhelmed by. Because I guarantee you, by the time you come to writing things down and you're procrastinating on, there may be 2, there may be 3 things from the 50 or so things that you have got on your to-do list. Those things that you're procrastinating on are the things that matter. And this will apply a level of focus to what actually matters to you. And therefore, because you now can see it on paper, never discount the power of paper. Because you can see it on paper, you're now like, do I actually need to procrastinate on those 3 things? Because if I'm being overwhelmed by those things, how important are they? I need to get busy on my procrastinating list. And that wraps up pretty much most of my part. In fact, it wraps up all of it. I'm now going to hand back to Ben, and hopefully you won't have the faux pas of not being able to see what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that was rather embarrassing for you, but don't worry, I'll run with this. If you put yourself on mute, Tomo, as well, he's having a stinker tonight, everyone, isn't he? Because I can hear myself. Thank you, mate. Right, flip to the next slide. We'll go straight into it. So, what is this? This is called the ICE model. So, several years ago, there is a participant in here as well, won't name names, who was working and still is working at this place. It's a major car manufacturer, and I absolutely cuffed, which is a word in the Marines for blagged, a little or a couple of speaking gigs at this manufacturer, which was quite exciting at the time and very humbling. And I was still serving in the Marines, so I had to cry off work and pretend I was ill. And I spent more time going, yes, yes, I got some work with these people, which is going to be serious clout when I move forward into the future, and less time thinking about what to actually say to them. So the night before the delivery, I was building a deck or PowerPoint, sat there behind my hands going, oh, I've got it, but I don't know what to say to them. What do I say to these corporate people? So I was tapped around on the laptop for some time, and I used red wine as a sort of helper, and got somewhere in the end to have just the word ICE written on a bit of paper, which seemed a bit strange at the time. So I attached a few words to it, which was inspiration, courage, and at the time, execution, which sounds a bit morbid. But it worked in my head, and I think because I was still serving, execution was just fine. So I went along and delivered this, and a couple of people came up afterwards and said, oh, I really like that ICE thing you were talking about. I was like, yeah, I do as well, because people seem to like it. And what a cuff. A week or 2 later, I did it again. And then I started to work out what this looked like. And then it was at the time Ant and myself were meeting up, and we got together, and I said, hey, I've got this thing here. It's called the ICE model. And straight away he pointed out, yeah, let's change let's change execution to enactment, shall we first? Because that sounds quite sadistic, the N word. Yeah, good point. And then we played with it. Now, what it means is it's broken into, well, it's formed into an upside down traffic light. And as it looks like that on your screen there. And so inspiration is at the bottom, courage is in the middle, and then enactment is at the top. What it really means is our belief in that if you understand your real intrinsic drive for why you want to do what you want to do, it helps build courage, which then in turn helps you take the steps forwards. Now, I'm only just going to roughly explain this because it's actually the theme of next week. So we're going to be talking a lot about this ICE model in depth. But I just want you, before we move into next week, to try and understand what it is in your life that truly inspires you. And if those of you which know, Simon Sinek coins it as why. So what's your internal why? What's your reasoning for doing what you're doing? So after delivering this to the corporate bods that we delivered to back then, we then spent some time really delving into this and thinking, well, actually there's something behind this ICE thing, and it really does have some sort of sense, and it isn't just fueled by red wine. And when we picked it apart, we realized that Antony and myself and everyone we spoke to ever since that day has been applying this ICE model in some way into their life. So an inspiration is something that can drive you forward, something that becomes that internal why, your reasoning for doing what you're doing. And inspiration isn't necessarily a goal, but goals can be attached to your inspiration. So, well, put it bluntly, once upon a time for my wife and I, children were a goal. 2 minutes later, they arrive. Now they can't be a goal anymore, so they become more of an inspiration. But what I can do is attach goals to my children, who are my main driver, to work on so they have a better life. So my inspiration right now is my children, and it will forever be my children. But they change along the way. And before this was, for me, making my life clean before joining the Royal Marines and not doing what I was doing. And then my inspiration was to be in the Marines, and my inspiration was to pass training, and then my inspiration was to be a great Marine, and then my inspiration was on the battlefield, the people left and right of me. And so it changes all the time. But if it's deep enough, it will give you more courage and more belief to take those steps forward. Now, I was watching the chat light up then when Ant asked who's a procrastinator, or who's overwhelmed, who's a procrastinator. Overwhelm is quite a big thing at the moment, and I'm not surprised to see how many people sort of answered, yes, I'm overwhelmed. I think a lot of us are quite overwhelmed with the situation which happened right now. But more of you put procrastination. So this is something we're really going to talk about next week. In our eyes, there's two real reasons why you procrastinate. The first reason is you're lazy and you can't be asked. The second reason is actually you're off focus, which I think is more the main reason. If you're off focus, then it's harder to get yourself going. And what I mean by off focus is if you feel like you're working towards something that isn't really aligned to what you want to work towards, and you're doing it because someone else is doing it, or you're doing it because you think you should be doing it even though you don't want to be doing it, or you're doing it for the wrong reasons, then when difficult days come, or it's raining, or you're tired, or you're hungry, or whatever the reason is, you're less likely to do it. And really, if something truly inspires us, you're going to go and do it. So we use this in this very simple way of thinking to understand how we can take steps in the right direction, how we can actually build courage and belief and then take those steps we want to take. Because inspiration, courage and enactment, the courage piece is just a bridge from one place to the other. Without courage and belief, you will never be able to take the steps. We can have all these dreams, we can have all these inspirations, we can have all these goals, but if you don't have, let's say, the bottle to do it, then you're never going to be able to take the steps. But think of this for a second. It's warmish at the moment. Let's say it's January and we're all together, and you never know, this might happen one day. We're all together and we're stood by a lake and it's freezing and it's cold, and let's say it's it's not midday, so it's really cold. We'll go for like 6 o'clock in the morning, so it's very, very cold. And I ask you to get in the very deep lake. What are you going to say? Let's actually, in fact, type it. I say to you, get in the lake. What are you going to say? So I'll give you 10 seconds. Yeah, standard answers. There's always a couple like, yeah, I'll do it. Everyone wants to do it when they're on screen. In we go. Okay, yeah, good. All right, no one's procrastinating. Honestly, I love a good swim. Actually, I think there is a free swimmer in it. No way. Okay. Most of you said, strangely, yes then. Okay, so you're a weird bunch. When we ask most people, they say no. Then when we give the reason and saying, okay, one of your family members is in that lake and they're struggling to swim, what will you do? You would go straight in there. You wouldn't then say no, or in we go, or can we wait, or whatever other answers we got coming up there. Every single person would dive straight in. So it's not the task of the lake that's necessarily the hardest part. It's what's in it for you, the reasoning for going into that lake. Now, most of us are completely inspired by our family or friends or people very close to us. So we're willing to risk more in order to save them if that was the case. So the cold lake and a struggling to swim family member, you're going to be straight in there. They're not in there and I ask you to get in there, you're going to say, why? What's the point? So it's the same situation for two very different ways of thinking. Now, it's not a morbid way of thinking. It's an interesting way to reflect, because when we put something like that, when we're talking about family and friends and what risks would you really take, what questions would you ignore and just go straight into the water to get them, you have to ask yourself why. So I would like you in between now and next week to think about what your inspiration is and how it can help you going forward. Now, before we move on to Q&A quickly, I'm just going to leave you with a quick anecdote to maybe sum this up a bit clearer. So I was on a military training course a few years ago, and we were going up, we were doing some hills training in the Brecon Beacons, which means you're roughly out on the hills for about 4 or 5 hours a day for 3 weeks solid, up and down, up and down, up and down. Each route was minimum 25 kilometers, maximum 45 kilometers, and you'd always be carrying a 50-pound backpack. Now this was January, so the weather wasn't nice. We'd get a lot of fog, which would come around 50 meters in, and it was grim. It was grim, and there was always moments when you sort of question why the hell you're doing it. I remember we were 2 weeks in, and I was going up this big hill, and we'd been marching, so walking around with our bags on for about 3 hours, and I thought I hit the top of the hill. So I got to the top of the hill, I went over the top, and then the hill dipped down and then carried going back up. And what I'd actually hit was something called a false summit. So I got to this false summit and literally went, oh, why am I doing this? And I leant down on my hands and knees. There was no one around, just me and the fog and the weather and the ground and my bag on my back. And I was wet and tired, and I thought, I can't be asked for this. Why am I even bothering doing this? I couldn't even work out the reasoning why I was on that point of the hill. Then someone appears next to me out the weather, out the fog, and does the same thing next to me. So he gets to the full summit. He then realizes it's a full summit, and he goes, oh, fuck this. So we're both there on our hands and knees in the middle of Brecon Beacons, moaning about a hill and the fog and the rain. And I couldn't really breathe. I was just like, you all right, mate? He's like, yeah, you're right. And then he puts his hand in his pocket. He pulls something out, and I didn't see what it was there and then on the spot. He looks at it, puts it away, and he just stands up and he starts to plod forward. He didn't sprint off. There was nothing heroic, and he started sprinting up the hill. He just kept plodding and kept plodding and plodding and plodding. And I remember thinking, I need what he's just taken. And then off he went into the fog. So that evening, when we were rehydrating professionally in the pub, I saw him. I didn't know him. He was just another person on course, and he was a fellow Marine, because there was people from all different military backgrounds on this course. And I went over, I was like, all right, mate, Ben, nice to meet you. How's things going? Was that you on the hill earlier? He's like, yeah, it was a rubbish route, wasn't it? I was like, yeah, rubbish, mate. can I ask you something? He's like, yeah, go for it. He's like, what did you take, or what did you look at earlier on the hill? Like, he looked at me perplexed. He said, what? What was that earlier? Bearing in mind they do drugs tests in these sports, I was like, you can't do any of that stuff. He's like, what are you on about? I went earlier, you stopped next to me and you had something in your hand and then you just carried on walking again. He's like, oh mate, you'd be an idiot. He said more things than that. And then we're all in our normal civilian clothes, jeans, t-shirts and stuff now. And he takes out this bit of card and he hands it to me. And I looked at it and it was laminated and it was a bit dogged. It'd been through the motions, that's for sure. And on the front was a very pretty little girl who was his daughter. On the back was a Range Rover and a picture of a beach holiday. And I looked at him, I was like, what's this mean? He went, that's my inspiration. That's the reason I do absolutely everything. And it kind of twigged in my head then. I was like, oh, that got you up the hill? He went, yeah. And then he explained it. He went, that little girl there, my only daughter, my only child, is the reason I do everything. Everything is the reason I do it. It's for her. And I was like, the Range Rover and the holiday? And he went, that's where I want to take it one day. I'm like, oh, that's cool. What about the Range Rover? He went, well, got to drive around in something nice. It's like, yeah, I like that. And it always stuck with me. It always stuck with me. Because I think we need this type of stuff when we're at our lowest. We need this type of stuff sometimes when we're at our highest, but we don't necessarily need it at that point. But we need it when we're at our lowest. And not necessarily the lowest where you might assume dark or depressed or anything like that. Lowest can mean you're digging deep. Lowest can mean you need to refocus. Lowest can mean that you've hit a hurdle or you've failed or you need to come back and reassess. You're stepping out your comfort zone. Lowest is when you're sort of really asking questions of yourself. And for me, it was very powerful to watch and realize what an inspiration looks like there and then on the spot when you see someone find that extra 20 to 40% in their physicality to carry on walking up the hill with the Bergen on it or with the backpack on. And he passed that course, flying colours, and he's doing very well in his career. But his little aid always stuck clear in my head. And it's exactly what this ICE model looks like, is when it matters most, you have something to remind you of why you're doing what you're doing, your inspiration, because that in turn makes you take that deep breath inside to go, I can do this. That's belief. That is belief in your head. And when you have belief, this amber bubble opens up and it causes you to have more courage, which then allows you to take more steps. It allows you to enact it, allows you to go for it. And it works in return as well. The arrows on the outside coming back down is because when you stop and you go, I can't go on any further. I can't do this. I'm questioning myself. I'm lacking the belief. You then nip into courage. You then nip into belief and you remind yourself, you have got this. And do you know what? Even if that fails, you can come back down one more arrow and you go to inspiration and you pull that thing out that reminds you of why you're doing what you're doing. You will find that extra 20 to 40%. You will 100% find it within yourself to grow that belief, grow that courage, to then take the step forward again and enact. And that is what people fail to do. And that is what we want to share with you next week, because when you work out what those inspirations are, and I know a lot of you have got children on here, because I know a couple of you, and some of you will have children, some of you won't have children, but if you can all work out the real reason why you do things, you will thrive in life and you will fail less. And when I say fail, that means quit. You'll procrastinate less. You will go for what you want because you believe in yourself, which builds this courage to take those steps. So next week, we're going to talk about all things ice. And so what I want you to do before we get to next Monday, remember Monday, I know 15 people have forgotten it's Monday and they're going to be sat there tomorrow going, oh, when's it not started? Next Monday, come armed with this inspiration, and it can be more. It can be more. My children, my inspiration, Ant's my inspiration, my wife, my mum, all these people, they inspire me to do certain things in my life. So come next week with your inspirations, why you do what you do, and we'll start to plan certain goals of using this ICE model, something maybe very different to what we've been through before. So, little teaser before we move into next week. I've noticed all of you once again have stayed to the very end, which is again humbling. Love it. So I do believe we're going to be moving into a Q&A session if Tomo can work the PowerPoint. So as per usual, and I think we're all getting the theme of this now, if you, how stupid is that? I'm trying to use the mouse on the screen. If you want to start putting some questions in the Q&A box or in the chat, we'll do our best to answer them. And by all means, if you feel like you've seen enough, heard enough, feel free to leave. And we will see you at 7:45 next Monday. Okay, next Monday. What is that date? Someone will type it quicker than I can find it on my phone. 27th. And I know a few of you want to go and watch SAS Who Dares Wins with Foxy. That starts at 9 o'clock. We will be doing an Instagram live with Foxy this week or next as well. So, yeah, that kept you tuned in, didn't it?
Aaron, just to let you know, we'll be doing all of that inspiration, courage, enactment next week. So look out for that for sure.
Well, James, got a copy of the book Mindset. Well done. Honestly, brilliant read. Brilliant read. Some questions. How to find inspiration? Yeah, Aaron. 27th. Yeah. Thank you, Aaron.
Most welcome, Sarah.
No, it's not. It's not out till January now. January the 7th it comes out, Sarah. Unfortunately, it was meant to come out in May, but COVID being the arsehole, let's call it that it's been, it's pushing everything further on into year. But there's worse things happening in the world right now, so it will come. I promise it will come. You can have a signed copy.
James, just to answer your question there, when you spoke about everything being a skill, bar a few things, of course, but do you think anyone can do anything with enough drive, time, and inspiration? Absolutely. You know, at the end of the day, what we're giving you here is a tool set to go away, take the bits that you want from it, adapt it to whatever makes sense for you, because ultimately it is a personal journey. All of this is a personal journey. Success is a personal journey. Success isn't the end destination, it's the way in which we get to it. But ultimately, if drive, time, and conversation is what you've taken away from this, or what you've been planning on, or whatever it is, use it, because ultimately drive is brilliant. That consistency. Remember the three things that I spoke about: foundations, time investment, consistency. The foundation elements really are what we're giving you here. You add the drive, time, and you add the inspiration. I can't tell you what your inspiration is. Ben can't tell you, but I think it's a really relevant question. And in answer to that, I believe yes.
Before I come back to your question, Angela, 2 points just to bring to light there. Susie, thank you so much. You used ARA this week. I already heard about that, which is brilliant. Accept the situations happen, remove unwanted emotion, adapt the situation. Thank you for applying it for a start, because that shows you have belief in what we're talking about. Jackie, just want to share with the group, I noticed you mentioned meditation for sleeping. I meditate most days, morning, afternoon, and bedtime. I find morning mindfulness meditation amazing. It brings you into the present and helped me massively reduce anxiety attacks a few years ago. That is awesome to hear. I got my own story about meditation when Ant, Layla, and myself were recording the podcast recently. Both of them put down the microphones halfway through and started meditating on their own in the room, which was a bit surreal. And I was sort of left there wondering what they're doing. So I'm getting into it, that's for sure. But I just want to raise a point there as well, Jackie, is, a few people have got to go and tend to the children right now, and we've all got to go about our evenings to go and watch SAS Who Dares Wins. I get it. But most people are staying tuned to the Q&A at the end. And Jackie's raised a point there, which I really like, and what we want to try and run a theme of over the next couple of weeks is, don't just allow us to talk at you. We would really like to hear how you've applied certain things like Susie has, and also your past experiences, because what we're slowly trying to build here is not a one-way webinar where we tell you things. We want to grow a community of like-minded people who can share things and say, I've applied this here, not necessarily just what we're talking about, but things in your own previous experiences and your wealth of knowledge as well within this group. I think please feel free to share. There's no one in this group that we know of who would be out here to cause harm. This isn't some social media platform where if you put a comment, someone's going to say something and it's going to be rude or cause offence, because we'll just get the Marines on them. This is an open group where please share some stuff. So Jackie, thank you very much. And honestly, if you've not tried it, sit on the end of your bed for 5 minutes doing breathing exercises. It does actually help. Angela, do you think overwhelm and fear of failure are linked? Yes, but I'm going to talk about that next week. So you'll have to stay tuned. We are going to talk about fear next week, and I feel as combat veterans and people within our community, we have a wealth of experience in dealing with fear. And what we like to say before we even go into it is we're not fearless. In fact, we probably feel fear the same, if not more, than a lot of people. But we're going to talk about the psychology of how that works. And we're actually going to bring in our team psychologist next week to talk briefly on the matter. But we will be going through it. And yes, it is linked to overwhelm, that's for sure. Tommy, I can see you sort of biting your pen, wanting to say something.
I knew you thought I was probably wanting to do that, but actually I was just playing around with it that time. So apologies for that cue. But anyway, I might as well say something. Could soft skills, Angela, could soft skills also be called human skills? Yes, I suppose so. I'm not overly familiar with the definition of human skills. If they're closely linked and they sound about right, then sure, of course, call it that. It's just, as I said, with everything that Ben and I put together, it's just our own interpretations of things to help give as many people as we can talk to just a different perspective. This is what it's all about, and this is one of the things that, you know, if you don't gain anything from us over the next 6 weeks, is this whole perspective piece. You know, we've both been to combat and reflected upon the things that we've experienced in theatre, etc. And it's that perspective, that different lens to say that this is the situation, this person's behaving like this, or this situation is playing out like this. Okay, how could it be looked at like this? And that's really all we're doing for life, for skills, for mindset, all of those types of things. I don't know if that answers your question.
I can't see a name because it won't show it, but I will add that the ARA, specifically Condor Moment, a fair amount, as well as using this before you count down to 5, get up and do it, got me a PB in running. James, spot on. It's so good to hear little success stories like that. I will also join you on that one, as I was challenged to do as fast as I could 5K this week, which I'm not a natural runner. And I had to use ARA myself a little bit this week to get my head in the game in order to go and do the run. So good to see that. So good to see you actually physically really and mentally striving and thriving. So well done. Sarah Jane, fear of failure is my inspiration. Love that. We're going to talk about fear of failure next week. So definitely tune in, Sarah. I know you'll be here anyway. Or it is Monday. It's SAS Who Dares Wins, isn't it? Sarah loves the SAS Who Dares Wins. After a while. Love that. Jackie, after last week, I felt so motivated and finally took action. Feel I'm being more courageous and determined not to let the fear win. Have also felt overwhelmed with the help and support have had from those I reached out to help my vision become a reality. This is brilliant stuff. This is absolutely brilliant stuff. So courage and determined to not let fear win. Now, we're not going to digress too much into fear because, and I know Tom will probably text me in a second saying, shut up, we'll talk about it next week. But just before you go anywhere, and I don't know if I mentioned it last week, or it might have been to another group, but just think fear is false events appearing real for a start. And you've trained your own fears because you're only born with 2 fears, that of noise and falling. And I do believe we discussed that last week. So we're going to obviously elaborate a lot more on that next week and discuss how fear can get in the way. But remember, fear is your perception of something that might be the unknown, or as a consequence of something that you may have experienced similar before. So it is week 3 next week. That's going to put us pretty much halfway through this program. I know, sad face emojis. Let's get them up. But we want to break the back of fear for a lot of people because it is something that causes overwhelm, but fear also causes procrastination. Now, a lot of you put your hand up there to say you procrastinate. Now, fear will have quite a big association with your ability to not procrastinate, or if you succumb to procrastination, because you fear of what might be on the other side. We also fear our physiological responses, such as the adrenal rush, cortisol dumps, which cause shaking, heart speeding up, breathing, sweat, bowel movements. All these types of things make us go, oh shit, this isn't right. So then we can step back and away from what we're trying to do. But really, that's just a natural sign that you're actually progressing in the right direction. It just feels a bit unusual. So that's what we're going to go into next week. So if you think you've already getting over fear right now, Jackie, you're going to be winning by the end of next week's seminar, that's for sure.
One from anonymous attendee. I'm a bit stuck. I'm trying to get fit enough for 2021 young office course, but I'm still recovering from an operation. I can't do much exercise. I've got my inspiration, but I don't know what I can do alongside the physical training to help me get there. Any tips and advice? Haven't had pretty life-changing injury myself with regards to preventing me from continuing my career. I know Ben also has the same with his injury. The reality is that it's that acceptance piece, that there isn't a lot you can do physically. So what can you do not physically? Basically, what can I do in terms of reading? What can I do in terms of study? Become studious in your mind and really gain or increase those skill levels, I would suggest. But not knowing your situation at all, there is two sides of it. There's two sides to everything, obviously. You know, you can push yourself and be like, well, I'm going to do this anyway, regardless. And you push it too much. Or you go through that process of, I'm not giving up on this, but it will take how long it takes. Now, I don't know if you've got time pressures on your 2021 Young Office course. If you're young, you do have time on your side. So don't force something, but never give up on it if it really means something to you, which you have said, I've got my inspiration. So I don't know if you can take anything from that, but obviously I don't know your situation. So therefore I wouldn't want to say this is absolutely a course of action to take. Does that help?
Just one to say from Aaron, I think it is here, ARA will become second nature. I used it this week without thinking about it until James said what he said. Been doing it for a long time to get fizz in. Spot on. Because when things become habitual and you actually do it without even thinking, and it's second nature, it means you are reprogramming that mindset in a positive way in order to achieve what you want to achieve. And if you can naturally adapt to something such as ARA, which is very difficult to adapt to, you know, accepting adversity, removing any unwanted emotion, adapting to the situation, is very difficult to do. Where it immediately starts is stopping 5 seconds, think with clarity, and not emotional response, and then you can go forward. So really good to see. Angela, you've removed social media apps from your phone. You say much better. Give us a thumbs up for how good you feel this week. I started doing something this week as well, Angela. I'm going to join you here. In fact, I did it last week. So I got into the habit of leaving my phone downstairs on charge all the way through the night, which meant that it wasn't the last thing I saw when I went to bed or flicked through and kept me awake for half an hour longer than I wanted to be. And it also wasn't the first thing I saw when I woke up in the morning. And honestly, it has such a positive impact in everything I'm doing. I'm actually reading more things as well and waving at the wife. So I am with you there, Angela.
Jackie, I got you back. Jackie,
oh.
I love a good read, as does Ben.
The Commander Mindset's really good by Ben Williams.
Absolutely no humility left in this bloke. So it's pretty good. It's called Dao Di Chang Lao Tzu, and it's basically a translation of a load of different Chinese proverbs, but in their original context. And there's some really, really powerful things in there, just for ideas, etc. I can't remember, Ben, last week, did I suggest this book, As a Man Thinketh? Was it on this webinar, or was it a different?
Nope.
Okay, this webinar, I'd recommend As a Man Thinketh, James Allen, very, very thin book. However, the content of it is so eye-opening. About £3 off Amazon. Definitely get that into you. And then this one, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor E. Frankl. Ultimately, I think I mentioned this, done quite a lot of webinars last week, so apologies if I didn't, but Viktor Frankl basically was a Austrian psychotherapist, and was captured by the Germans because he was Jewish, put in a concentration camp or a death camp, and he had pretty much some terrible experiences with obviously what was going on, the conditions. Everything was taken away from him. He lost his family, and he spent a number of years in the concentration camp and came up with this thing called logotherapy. And basically, logotherapy is this idea of you having one thing that is forever yours, and that is choice, and that is the way you think about things. Now, he explains that in that book, obviously a lot better than the 5 seconds I've just given you there. But those 3, incredibly powerful for mind, powerful for mindset. I wish I could enunciate tonight. That would be helpful.
Just one from me, because Thomas said a couple there. The Daily Stoic. I'm reading a few books at the moment, but the Daily Stoic's a brilliant one, which is by Ryan Holiday, and it's literally Stoicism for 5 minutes a day, where you wake up and one day is an inspirational meaning from a philosopher broken down as to what it means. 1 page a day, such simple reading. Wake up, read it, done.
On a level though, just to finish on the point, Command of Mindset genuinely is a really good read, and really looking forward to it coming out in January for everyone else.
Yeah, I've heard the authors read. Yeah, thanks for that plug. Susie, try to set mini goals. Yes, we're going to talk about that next week. You can't eat an elephant whole. Exactly. Mini goals, progressional steps, break down the journey, set checkpoints, stepping stones. Too many people go, I am going to achieve this. And it's so big that when that first hurdle comes or they fail, they think, that's too big. I'll go back into my little hole and I'll hide away from it. No. So we're going to talk about that next week, about breaking down. And also that actually helps with procrastination. Another book overload, but Brian Tracy, Eat That Frog. If you had a bowl of frogs, all horrible different sizes of frogs, disgusting frogs, different shapes and sizes, and you had to eat them. There's no choice. It's hypothetical. You had to eat them. He says and poses the idea and the reasoning that if you start with the biggest, ugliest, fattest, disgusting frog first and eat that, the rest aren't going to be as bad as that one. And how he then relates that to goal setting and not procrastinating on things and making the use of your time is those of you which have to-do lists with things on that you look at and go, email boxes, people to call, things to clean, do the hardest, toughest, shittest one first, and then the easier it gets, because that's what we do. If you leave the worst things to the end, the bigger things to the end, then it's only going to be an upward battle all day. Whereas if you start from the day going biggest, hardest tasks first, then it's downhill. I remember a good friend of mine in the Marines, I won't mention his name, said to me what his mum said about a roast dinner and how he then looked at that like goals. And she says, if you eat all your greens first, then the rest of the stuff on the plate is more enjoyable. Now, there are probably some weirdos within the room and go, I like the greens. But really, most of us just sort of eat the greens because we've got to eat the greens. So my friend's mum poses the theory, just like Brian Tracy does, that goal setting should look like a roast dinner, that you eat all the greens and the annoying bits first, and then you can eat the meat and then the potatoes and the stuffing and then the sausages wrapped in bacon at the end, because you finish on such a high. So we'll talk about that again next week.
James, just to answer your question there quickly, we're going to do one better, and we're going to start filling out and padding out the website in something that's going to be coming out in the near future. So all the reading lists will be up on there.
Yeah, Jackie, there'll also be an email pushed out Wednesday, which will have follow-ups for this week and last week. We had to swap over email chains this week, so you didn't get one last week. There may be in a few moments of issues with the emails as well, because we have to swap over something. So bear with us on that one. Good question, Andy. I know this is an eclectic mix of people in here. So some of you are here for personal development, some of you are here for health and fitness, others for mindset, and some of you are here for the military. Would you say motivation is the same as inspiration? Where were both your inspirations whilst being beasted at CTC? Good question. Inspiration drives your motivation. Motivation doesn't drive your inspiration. So I won't harp on about this point too much, but if as a Royal Marines recruit, you'll turn up to training, you want to earn a green beret, but you have 32 weeks or 64 weeks if you're going to the dark side, the officer's side, to earn that green beret. That's a lot of time in between. So you have to break the journey down. And if you're just thinking about getting that green beret bang, straight on the spot. It's not going to happen. You've got a lot of work to do in between them. That green beret is a bit of cloth. That's all it is. But it has an incredible amount of meaning behind it and reasoning for having it. And the reason it's so incredible to put on for the first time and earn the green beret is because of the hard work that it takes to get there. It doesn't come easy. So strangely, when you're getting beasted and you want to cry and you want to go home and you want to give up and your legs hurt and you're about to vomit, you think about the reasoning of why you're there. I want to be a green beret. I want to be a Royal Marines commander and wear a green beret. That is inspiration, which then in turn makes you dig deep and motivates you to go that bit quicker, finish that beasting, whatever it is, to get through it. Beastings only last about an hour. The pride of having a green beret lasts your whole life, and there's a reason behind that. So I'm sure when you go through the process, you'll understand what I mean there.
A lot. Andy, just for me, or maybe isolation on this, but motivation for me is a byproduct of action. The inspiration ultimately is the guiding light. It's the light which you're going towards. Whereas motivation is for me a byproduct of actually doing the thing. Therefore, it's a mark or a measure of how far I've come. I can look back and go, I am motivated because of what I've done. So I think if you think about I need to be more motivated, then really I would say the motivation comes once you begin doing something. So day one leads to day two leads to week one, so on and so forth, if that helps. But I think that's probably it for us. Ben, I think we're good. And
that's it for me.
15 minutes in.
No, that's it from me. Again, that's over half of you stayed behind to listen to Q&As at the end and ask great questions, and just some of you sitting there listening. It's brilliant. Like we always say, this is a very mixed group of people. We have people who have contacted us directly and asked about certain things, and we know some of you are here for different reasons as to others. So what we're doing is trying to speak about mindset and personal development. A very short 6-week program. There's lots more that we offer, but within this context, it's getting a few golden nuggets in the bud, which everyone can apply, rather than trying to nail down who's going into the military, who's trying to get physically fit. Whatever you're trying to achieve, whatever everyone's trying to achieve in this room right now, is if this bit up here, this grey matter is in place, and even better if you understand just a little bit of how it works. And I know we all do, but if you just understand a little bit more detail, i.e. the neurology and the psychology behind certain thinking patterns, you will unlock and harness your potential even further for where you want to be, because we're all in great places. Some of us, and I would assume probably all of us within this room, want to be a bit further on. And that's not because bad things are happening. That's because many of us are hungry and we've achieved something and we want to achieve something more. So that's the entire reason why we're running this program, is not to fix people, to help make people. We're enjoying it. We've had a lot of responses this week. It's fantastic to see the questions that are popping up. It's fantastic to see people staying to the end as well. Really, truly is humbling. We appreciate your time on a Monday evening. And obviously with any course, we do lose numbers as we move through. It's natural human behavior. So I'm going to challenge you to be the resilient ones who get all the way to the end to week 6. But B, as we have a few spaces, if you know 1 or 2 people you think could pick this up straight away, or you want to bring someone along, then get in touch, info@findyouredgecoach.com, or LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you found us, and we'll add their names to the list. But other than that, it's good night from me.
And a good night from me.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
Yeah, I said it. It was too late.
Oh, it's a car crash. Good night, everyone. See you later.
Bye-bye.